This is Gators Breakdown with myself, David Waters, and Joey V. Because we ourselves took a bye week last week a little bit, so we could spend some time with our family and gear up for this last month of the season. So, Joey, it's been a while since we've gotten together. So, how you been?
Pretty good, man. I've been itching to get back on the show. So it's been, we took the week off last week, like you said. We kind of were debating on whether we were going to do the show or not, but we were like, well, it's going to be a long season. We still got, 6 more weeks, so we're gonna take a break ourselves.
Yeah, that we did.
So it was nice. Yeah, it was nice. Had a week off and spent the weekend with the family. I went golfing yesterday, which is always a positive. I'm a big avid golfer, so I try to golf at least 2 or 3 times a month. So,
oh, I hear you. I hear you. Yep. So yeah, a little quick weekend with my parents came down and did the Jaguars game yesterday. So I was in Everbank Field yesterday and
I'm sorry.
Yeah, ugly showing from the Jaguars, but I got the little hint of Florida, Georgia. Some of the banners they hang around the city have already been hung up, and you can see the temporary stands that have already been built for the game as well. So, this made me, while I was sitting there watching the Jaguar game, Florida's still, on the mind a good bit with seeing everything in downtown Jacksonville. So since we didn't talk last week during the bye week, it was kind of also, in a way, a midway point in the season for the Gators. So, Joey, just get your quick thoughts on, the season so far, and what's your biggest takeaway from what we've seen as Florida's 5-1 heading into the Georgia game?
Inconsistent ups and downs. Especially offensively. Obviously, the defense has played lights out for 90% of the year. The offense is very inconsistent this year. Very disappointed in that. I know that Appleby had to start for 2 weeks, but still, I thought he would be a plug-and-play guy in McElwain's system. He kind of struggled a little bit against Tennessee, obviously, in the second half, and he definitely struggled against Vanderbilt. But the second half of the season, if the offense can kind of click now that, Del Rio's back and he's healthy, hopefully, Florida can finish this thing off, going unbeaten. That would be ideal. Go to Atlanta with a 10-1 record, not 11-1, but 10-1, or no, 11-1 record, excuse me, 11-1 record, 10-1 record. It would be 10-1. We still missed the game. So it would be 10-1 record going to Atlanta. That would be very ideal. But obviously that LSU game and that Florida State game are going to be tough.
That they are. And, with the changing of the LSU game, now the second half of the season for Florida looks a lot more difficult than it did, say a month ago. So we got that going for us. With Georgia and that trip to Arkansas always scared me. Even before the season started, the week after Georgia, Arkansas is an up and down team, but do play much better at home. And I'll kind of just piggyback off of you. Yeah, I think the biggest thing I take away from the season so far is there's nothing to build on for this offense. You mentioned the inconsistency, and I really think, when Del Rio went down against North Texas, there was just really no way to build this offense and for it to just keep growing. Once and Del Rio at center, they brought him in to be a game manager type quarterback, and that's the way he looked versus UMass with a lot of checkdowns and, not a lot down the field. But then against Kentucky, while he looked good, he started forcing some throws more into coverage. North Texas kind of the same way. And then the Missouri game, when he comes back, that was not a game manager performance. There was 3 interceptions, could have been 5 if you really go back and look at it, forcing the ball into some areas. So I think my biggest takeaway is, of course, the quarterback. It's always easy to look at the quarterback, but Del Rio, while he's playing okay, he's not terrible, he's not great. That's what a game manager kind of quarterback is, but he can be great, I think, in this offense for what it can be. It's just he's not really doing the game manager things you really expected from him that we heard in the preseason and what we saw in the first game. And I tweeted out today, I think, the aggressiveness in this Florida offense won't be from the quarterback. It will be in the play calling. So if he can be aggressive in the play calling, let the play calls come to him. McElwain and Nussmeier, are going to set him up. And we've seen in the Missouri game, I'll go back. The first half of that game, the plays were there, and he just could not hit the deep ball to save his life. So, Tyree Cleveland, he hit the one on the first drive. But that was pretty much it. And Del Rio was off, forced some throws. So I think if he plays within the offense, lets the play calling be aggressive, that's when I think the Florida offense can be aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. The running game has definitely been improved throughout the year. It seems like it's gotten better actually with every game, which I'm very happy about. This team is definitely a run-first team. It needs to be because the pass protection is absolutely atrocious for the offensive line. The run blocking has actually been pretty good this year. I've been rather pleased with the run blocking. Obviously, the biggest disappointment in the offense so far has been the offensive line. We expected experience. We expected Mike Summers to have this group ready. They were inexperienced last year. We expected them to come back with veteran savvy this year and experience under their belt, and they've done nothing but expectations.
Yeah, so and you mentioned it earlier, so we'll hit the defensive side of the ball, but just for a second for a quick review. And you mentioned we would talk about it. Jalen Tabor, Quincy Wilson, left off the Thorpe Award semifinalist list. And I'll preface that with they can still win the award. Florida came out and actually tweeted themselves because I'm pretty sure they saw a lot of people in uproar about that with Quincy Wilson and Jalen Tabor not on the semifinalist Thorpe Award. But what in the world and how in the world are those two guys not on the list?
I think it's because the media who makes the list doesn't like that they run their mouths, I guess. They kind of obviously shot themselves in the foot with their performance against Tennessee. And I think that was the biggest thing. If they had came out and performed, especially Jalen Tabor, I think that that obviously I think things would have been looking better for him. But they obviously, ever that moment against Vanderbilt and Missouri, they pretty much shut down everything that came to their side of the field. Missouri didn't have a first down until almost halftime, I believe. Yeah. So their offense, who was supposed to be the number one offense in the SEC, which is kind of deceiving because they played some pretty bad teams, really shut down. We saw 2 weeks ago. Drew Lock looked worse, I think, this year than he did last year as a freshman. Missouri kind of wasn't really expected to do much this year, but the defense obviously is just ridiculous. And good news, it sounds like we're going to get Brian Cox Jr. back, Jordan Sherritt, and Joey Ivy back for the game this weekend. Still a game time decision, I think, on Jared Davis, but I think he's the kind of guy that has so much heart that it'll take much lock him in a cage to keep him off the field. So I'm pretty sure that he's going to play. I don't know what percentage he's going to be at. Apparently that ankle sprain was pretty bad. I'm just looking forward to the defense just continuing to do what they've done the last 6 weeks. That's been ridiculously good. They're number 2 in the country for a reason. The number 2 scoring defense, the number 2 pass defense, number 2 total defense. And unfortunately, the rushing defense hasn't been that good. I think somewhere around 20 is the rushing defense for Florida right now, which is kind of a disappointment because we expected the defensive line to be stellar. But obviously due to injuries, Caleb Brantley, he has been 100%. Brian Cox Jr. obviously banged up. Hasn't been really a good showing for the defensive line. Kind of some unsung heroes in Zuniga and seeing young guys like that perform has been really special to watch this year, and I'm really looking forward to what the defensive line is going to be in the next year or two.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway. You've seen Anzalone and Davis live up to expectations. You've seen Tabor and Wilson live up to expectations. But along that defensive line, I really like what I'm seeing from the young guys so far in Zuniga and now Antonius Clayton. A couple games ago they finally decided to throw him in, and he's proven to be good. I think you could see once they kind of played as a group, these young guys in the Missouri game, you could see them struggling a little bit. But once you threw them in, early in the game, once you throw these young guys in with the more experienced guys, you can see, potential that these guys have on that side of the ball. But Wilson and Tabor's stats speak for themselves. On Gridiron Now, I found, they're allowing just 38% of their passes to be completed right now on them, and no defense has allowed under 40% since TCU in 2002. So pretty good stat there. And Florida's only allowed 4 touchdown passes all season. Every one of those were against Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Florida's defense this weekend can do against Georgia's running game. Obviously, need to prove themselves along the defensive line. I'm a little disappointed with how Caleb Brantley's played this year. Obviously, he's been kind of banged up, but he was supposed to be the leader of this defense, and he's really hasn't kind of, so to say. But I'm really excited to see what this Gators rush defense has against, arguably the best running back they'll face until Fournette. So the best 2 running backs they'll face until Fournette. Is actually ranked ahead of Florida's in rushing defense. Their rushing defense is actually really good. So I actually was quite surprised when I saw that stat that their run defense has been better than Florida's this year. A lot of young guys on their defense. Their pass defense has been terrible. We'll get into that when we preview the game.
Yep, I tweeted out the stats earlier today for Georgia's defense, so we'll definitely dive into that. And before we move on to the Georgia game, just one more stat that kind of tells you the ridiculousness of Quincy Wilson himself being left off the Thorpe Award semifinalist list. He is allowing a 0.4 QBR rating thrown against him. 0.4. That is ridiculous. I mean,
nobody's even close in the country either. Nobody's even close, I don't think.
No, it was 1.5 going into the Missouri game, and it was better. He improved in that game. So it's unreal and not to mention the 2 back-to-back pick sixes both of those guys had.
And right now he's projected to get drafted higher than Tabor.
Yeah, he is. So Florida's got stout, and Joey, you and I actually talked about it. It's kind of funny. We were talking about how good those guys were. And if you add all the numbers up, Florida might be losing about 7 guys off this defense, going into next year. So we mentioned the young guys that are – we mentioned the young –
2007 all over again.
Yeah, that's exactly probably what it will look like. We mentioned the young guys that are getting some playing time. But you know what? It's still half of this season left. We don't want to look too forward yet. Especially because it is the week for me. I grew up in Georgia. All my best friends are Georgia fans. This is a game that means the most to me. Jacksonville is my hometown. I was born in Jacksonville, moved to Georgia. All my best friends are Georgia fans, like I said. So this is the game that means the most to me. And I will call it by its not political correct name. It is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, not this bull crap River City showdown that schools are trying to get past. This is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. So, Joey, quickly, do you have a favorite Florida-Georgia memory game or whatever?
I was there for the Georgia Stomp in 2007. I was there at the game, and that was the moment where I swore I would never, ever, ever respect Georgia fans and Mark Richt ever again. There was quite a few fights, actually, after that game in the parking lot. It was crazy. I remember some guy got knocked out right in front of me, actually. Somebody hit him with a left hook and took him out. And that was a pretty crazy game, just the atmosphere. Obviously, Georgia was ranked, I think, number 5. I think Florida's ranked number 7. I think Florida was 7 and Georgia might have been 5 in that game. They were really close. I think Florida and Georgia were both top 10 teams in that game. So that was Matt Stafford's last year. And I think Isaiah Crowell was the running back for Georgia.
That would have been 2007.
Or was it Noshawn? Was it Noshawn?
It was Noshawn. That was only Stafford's sophomore year because they both came back.
Oh, was it sophomore year? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, he left after his junior year anyway.
Yep.
Right. So that was his second. Okay.
Yep.
So it was Noshawn and Matt Stafford. I remember that game. That was probably my most memorable game. Because I was there. I was able to experience it to the fullest. I was there in 2005. I've been to this will be my 6th Florida Georgia attendance actually next week. I've been to 6 games. I went in 2013 unfortunately. 2014, unfortunately, it's been watching Tyler Murphy try to take on the the Bulldogs was not fun. We actually that's crazy about that game. If you remember, in 2013, we almost came back.
Came back. Yeah.
If you remember that, we did come back.
Yeah.
Fans were filing out of the stadium in the third quarter. I mean, it was, and then people were trying to come back in, and the security staff wouldn't let anybody in. People were running up to the gate to try to come back in, and staff was trying to keep them out and stuff because I think it was 23-20 in the beginning of the fourth quarter, and so that was kind of crazy too. But I'm really looking forward to this being my sixth time being at a Florida Georgia game. Florida, whether you're a Georgia fan or the cocktail party or, whatever you want to call it, it has 20 different names. But I always call it Florida, Georgia. That's what I've always called it. Even when it was the cocktail party, it's always Florida, Georgia to me. Florida's always first anyway. Just look at that last 25 years. Florida's been first most of the time. So, but I just hope that history's on the side of the Gators this week. I do.
Yeah, well, Florida will be favored. I think 6.5 to 7 points are important depending on where you look for this game. So about a touchdown for the Gators, and Georgia with a bye week coming off the loss to Vanderbilt, and a big surprise there. So they'll be coming in trying to right the ship, trying to Kirby Smart. It's his first season, trying to right the ship and get a big win. His first year here. So, two former Bama, assistants going at it in Jacksonville with McElwain and Smart. So, Joe, you mentioned on the injury front for the Gators that Brian Cox, sounds like he'll be back. Joey Ivy, George Sherritt, Jared Davis may be back. Like you said, this is probably one of his biggest games of the year because he's a Kingsland, Georgia boy. So, it's right up the road from here in Jacksonville. His family will be here. He grew up in Georgia, so I'm sure this game's big for him as well. But yeah,
Treon Harris to do a jersey. Can we sneak Treon to do a jersey this Saturday?
Yeah, that was but yeah.
Can we sneak him on the field for a couple plays? Undefeated against Georgia.
And don't get me and Joey wrong. This is the only game we want Treon Harris for.
It is. This is, and then we could just ban him to the depths. I mean, after this game. So.
More importantly, though, Kelvin Taylor as well. If we can scoot him in there,
he's dominated Georgia the way his dad did. The way his dad did. His dad's a legend at a Florida Georgia game, and his son was a legend now too. So
yeah, exactly. So going into this game, we talked about the Georgia defense and their stats. So Georgia right now only giving up 3.49 yards per rush, 111 yards per game. That's a 17th in the nation for that rushing defense, like you mentioned, Joey, and 228.6 yards per passing. That's 69th in the nation. So I guess the question begs to be, what should Florida do coming out and trying to establish its offense against this Georgia team? Do they try and come out and run the ball with the stable of backs they have, hopefully led by Jordan Scarlett, or do they kind of come out and do what I said against Missouri, let Luke Del Rio come out and throw the ball, maybe get him comfortable since that was his first game back? I didn't work out too well. I didn't like seeing 25 pass attempts in the first half from Luke Del Rio. I think that's entirely way too many. But, Joey, I mean, what do you think Florida should come out and do? Should they try and establish the run game against a tough run defense, or should they let Luke Del Rio maybe try and take advantage of this weak Georgia secondary?
Oh, absolutely. You got to throw the ball. You have to throw the ball. Georgia's secondary is terrible. They really are. They're, I think, definitely the country, I believe, in passing defense. You have to throw the ball against Georgia. You have to, because Georgia's going to force Florida to throw the ball. They're going to stack the box because they know that Florida can run the ball. So they're going to put 8 guys in the box and make Luke Del Rio beat them deep, and that's what Luke Del Rio is going to have to do. I think if you're McElwain, you got to come out throwing. If you know that Georgia's weakness is their secondary, I think you just have to, by nature, by default, you have to try to expose it.
I agree, but for some reason, whatever the reason, but it is a different coaching staff. Like I said, with Kirby Smart in here, it didn't matter what Georgia did the last couple of years; they weren't able to stop Florida's run game. So, And maybe in a way, they maybe try and pound it again and see if there's any early luck. Then maybe let Luke Del Rio throw it if there's no early luck. But I think this passing game works best if the run game is there first, and Luke Del Rio can base his game off of play action. But like you said, if Georgia's loading the box, they may not have a choice. McElwain likes the matchup scenario, so if they're loading the box, they may not have a choice but to try. And we've seen it almost every game. Florida will try and take a deep shot on the first drive of the game. And a lot of times, or sometimes it's been successful, sometimes it's not. Would
you go to Callaway or Cleveland?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. It looks like Cleveland will get. I think it'll be his first start. He's listed first on the depth chart. The depth chart that was released today. So you got Callaway, Cleveland on the outside. Maybe you run both vertical, and you let them. And you let Del Rio decide. Where I guess based off of coverage. Yeah. But if Georgia's got 8 in the box, 7, 8 in the box, one of them will be in single coverage somewhere. So.
That wide receiver combo is going to be lethal next year, isn't it? Not jumping too far ahead, but geez, Callaway and Cleveland next year. Wow, that's going to be special.
And it's funny that I think to myself, it's going to be very sad if Florida can't get the type of quarterback play they want, because Antonio Callaway next year probably is his last year. You would think maybe he could leave after a junior if he really wanted to. It would be sad to see him not be able to be a part of an offense where a quarterback could consistently get him the ball and get these receivers consistently the ball. Because if he had a quarterback that got him, as many touches and passes as he could get, I mean, we're probably looking at one of the best, receivers in Florida history if he could have a quarterback that. I mean,
he was on his way there with Will Greer. He was on his way there with Will Greer. He was.
And even
we can call it like it is. Yeah.
And even with Treon Harris last year, he was, the Georgia game last year, he had, a big play where they kind of played some backyard football and Harris hitting down and deep in the field. Florida, Georgia, and I said, I think for a Florida offense, it is, I think the passing game is going to have to get going first, Joey. I'll agree with you there. But it won't surprise me if they do maybe the first couple of drives, see what this run game can do since they've had some success the last couple of years. With that and trying to test Georgia's toughness again, because it seems the last couple of years show up in this game where Georgia just couldn't handle the Florida run game there. And Joey was probably going to get on our nerves a little bit. McElwain in his press conference today was asked point blank about the running back rotation. He still didn't necessarily seem to give the indication that it was going to lessen any. All the guys are going to get the carries, and he said the hot hand's going to get the ball in the fourth quarter. So, do you take him for his word, or do you think he's playing?
No, because Scarlett's been getting more touches. Obviously, Scarlett's been getting more touches. So, I've learned over the last 2 years never to take Jim McElwain at his word, because he is the most. I don't want to say the biggest liar. I'll just say he tiptoes around the truth quite a bit. He's known for that. Nick Saban's known for that. He learned from the best. He even did it at the Gator gathering in the spring when I was there. He tiptoed around the truth, and he'll never. If it's a question that he doesn't want to answer, he'll turn it into another answer, like of a completely separate response, just to kind of not have to answer it. He's very media savvy. He comes off as an aw shucks guy, but he's very intelligent. He's very smart, and he's very media savvy, and he knows how to, put words out there to the media that kind of say nothing. They say a lot, but they really say nothing. So I really don't believe him when it comes to the running back situation. I really do think Scarlett, obviously, anybody with a pulse, 2 eyes and 2 ears can tell that Scarlett's the best running back on the roster. And I think, obviously, Jim McElwain knows that. So we'll just expect Jordan Scarlett and LaMichael P. Ryan to get most of the carries on Saturday.
To be completely happy with that. Those two guys getting the majority of the carries. I think we see this running game is at its best with those two, and especially P. Ryan out of the backfield catching the ball. He's shown some flashes this year on those swing passes and the like, swing passes, screen passes there, where I think he's a weapon there, and I really think they need to find him a way to get the ball. And the running backs just in general with the screen game, because given the offensive line's difficulty to pass block a little bit. I really think some screen passes will help this offensive line just a little bit more. While they only gave up 1 sack against Missouri, Del Rio was pressured a good bit. He's helping that offensive line more than they're helping him. So when he's back there, we look for this run game. Don't get me wrong; they're all 4 get carries, but hopefully it's P. Ryan and Scarlett getting 80% of the carries, and Thompson and Cronkite filling in the gaps. So move to the other side of the ball. Jacob Eason coming in as a true freshman at quarterback, had his ups and downs, had a terrible game against South Carolina a couple weeks ago on that Sunday. But if you look at the common opponents that they had.
Worst game against Vanderbilt. Even worse game against Vanderbilt.
It was 27 of 40 for 346 in that game, 1 touchdown. So
deceiving stats. I watched the game. Very deceiving stats.
Exactly.
He looked terrible.
Yeah, it only led to 16 points. So all the stats can get you all you want. But yeah, you're right. 27 of 43, 46. But it wasn't necessarily a pretty 346. And against Mizzou, he had 308 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Probably one of his best games of the season. But we've kind of seen this Missouri defense. Not exactly one of the classic and what we've come to expect Missouri defenses from recent years after they've gotten blasted. Eason throws 308 on them. They got blasted by LSU, got blasted by Florida. Florida yardage-wise, they didn't give up a lot of points to Florida's offense. I think 19 only. But Florida's offense had over 500 yards. So I think, and Florida, the Tabor, Wilson, we talked about them. These guys have to be licking their chops going at a true freshman quarterback and an offensive line that's inconsistent and kind of, if you look at it, Joey, kind of similar to Florida's offensive line.
Yeah, I think Quincy Wilson said today or yesterday, I think he said that they're going to get back at Eason for choosing Georgia over Florida. Somebody said it. I thought it was Quincy Wilson, but they said they still remember, his time coming to Gainesville and having that 48-hour party session that was pretty much probably the most highly covered, official visit weekend that Florida's ever had.
Hungover in the
photos of Eason in the Midtown bars and photos of Eason in the Gainesville airport hung over, with his white shoes pretty much blackened from the floors at Grog, and I'm pretty sure SAE threw him a huge party that night too. That was probably the most publicized and most highly social media covered OV for any recruit. So, and having him choose your biggest rival in conference rival, over you is pretty big snub. So I'm sure the players remember that, they probably remember the good time that they had with him and showing him around campus and all that. And them, and then a week and a half later, he chooses Georgia. So, it's probably, something that they really do think of. But, Eason's a special talent. I mean, we can all see it. He's young, he enrollee. He's just a young guy, but he's so talented. And I don't want him to get in a rhythm. There's a chance, that he could get in a rhythm. I don't want it to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But I just definitely see that the secondary pretty much just baiting him into bad throws. I mean, the secondary smart enough, veteran enough, savvy enough to where they can trick a freshman into making, bad decisions. And I think that's pretty much where they're going to go this week. I'm just worried about Florida's rush defense. Obviously Sony Michel and Mike and Chubb combined for 68 yards against Vanderbilt, 68 yards for arguably the 2 best running backs behind Fournette in the SEC. And it's just incredible that they combined for 68 yards. So I don't want them to get going. That's who you don't want to get going, because if they get going, then Florida's going to have to move an 8th guy into the box, and then Eason's going to be able to do some things, and that's kind of what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Florida tries to do that anyway, just to see if he can match up with the secondary, because Tabor and Wilson are going to be on those receivers. Georgia doesn't really have a go-to receiver this year. Isaiah McKenzie is probably the most go-to receiver they have.
Godwin Jr.
Exactly, yeah. But they don't if you look at them, they're not a Callaway. They're not.
Well, they're small guys too. I mean, both of them are small guys.
Yeah.
They don't have an AJ Green anymore. That can go over people's
Right.
heads.
Exactly.
They don't have a
Jordan,
Malcolm Mitchell. They don't have a big 6'3", 6'4" receiver anymore.
No, and so I think a lot of the struggles with the run game comes from that offensive line. That offensive line cannot run block whatsoever. So you look at Chubb. He's been, like I said, he's been there just to be his third matchup against Florida, but he didn't play last year because of the injury against Tennessee. And the year before, when he was the feature back after Todd Gurley got hurt, Georgia got down so big. So
he got shut down.
Yeah, I mean, they were down so big, and I remember he had one big run. I think probably 40, 50 yards, and he fumbled at the end of that run, and gave Florida the ball back in good field position. So, Florida was up big most of the time in that game, starting around the second quarter. So Chubb couldn't really get going there. While he's been there for 2 seasons, only really faced Florida once, didn't have a lot of success there as Florida was rolling on offense that day. In the Will Muschamp, swan song for Florida, Georgia. You look at the running game there. Brian, I think they also, Brian Harrion, a true freshman who helps them, who can get some carries too there. But you're right, they can go 3-4 deep at running back for Georgia. You don't want to see that run game get going because that can help Eason, like you said, maybe kill off some play action.
You don't want to see Nauta get going. You don't want to see Nauta get going because if he gets going too, I mean, he's going to be the best tight end in the country in a year or two. I mean, I could see him being a Gronkowski type guy in the NFL. I mean, he's huge. He's massive, and he's 19 years old.
And you bring that up, if you're missing Jared Davis, he's a linebacker that can actually, maybe help cover him. I think that would still be a mismatch in a way favoring towards Georgia if you don't have a healthy Jared Davis, trying to cover Azagnata a little bit. But, you don't want to have your linebackers matched up too much against him because that is an advantage for Georgia if Eason has time to throw. He's going to be, he's gotten a rapport with him coming up these last couple games. So they're both true freshmen starting to get it going. But if you look at this Georgia team,
Marcus May's a guy too that could cover tight end. Marcus May has covered tight ends before. I know he covered Nick O'Leary the last 2 years against Florida State. So he does cover tight ends. So he does come down and play that kind of tight. So, yep. And when we look at Georgia, Joe, and what do you see the main problem is? Of course, they've lost 3 games so far this year. I don't think there's much of an excuse to lose to Vanderbilt, no matter kind of what the situation is. I did see some ups and downs with this team. You have a first-year head coach. You're starting a true freshman quarterback, new offensive coordinator, of course. And they're playing a lot of young guys. Is it just as simple as it's the first year head coach and a freshman quarterback? I think the Chaney hire was terrible. I hated it from the beginning, actually. If I was a Georgia fan, I'd be pissed. What has he done? What did he do at Arkansas? Yeah, he had good running backs, but what did he do that was special offensively at Arkansas? All these Georgia fans were excited when he got hired by Kirby Smart, and I'm sitting there like, okay, as a Florida fan, that's a good hire to me. I mean, he's nothing special. He really isn't. And I think he's not creative. And a lot of people now are comparing Kirby Smart to Will Muschamp as a type of coach, kind of stubborn, old school mentality, kind of handcuffs his offense. And that's Chaney to me. He frankly reminds me of a Charlie Weiss. I mean, what does he bring to the table that's special? Nothing, and that's something as a Georgia fan, if I was a Georgia fan, I'd be pissed about. I think he's underperformed the expectations that people had for him, which I don't know why they were so high in the first place. But, Georgia's offense was supposed to be explosive this year. It's supposed to be questionable. Their defense has struggled the last couple of years, and they were young this year. They were supposed to grow into their age, in the next couple of years. And Kirby Smart was supposed to kind of help groom them into that. But the fact that their offense, which has a lot of veterans on them, I understand that you have a freshman quarterback, but you had 2 veteran quarterbacks behind him that started the season and couldn't even beat out a freshman quarterback, and and Eason's a rare talent, but geez, Grayson Lambert couldn't beat him out. Lambert's got 2 years in that system, and it's just in that team. And, I think that's the biggest disappointment for Georgia is their offense in their running game. It's been, I mean, there's no other word to put it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely things you can point to for their struggles. Cheney being one of them. I had colleagues, our colleague Chad Neepling. We follow him and he follows Arkansas just as good as anybody. Did not like the Cheney hire for Georgia at all. That's somebody I trust who, just like that was a terrible hire.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, he was. He left there and went to Pitt for a year, and then came back to the SEC with Kirby Smart hiring him. So first year head coach Kirby Smart. Cheney not being a great hire in a lot of people's minds. But you're right. We really thought they were going to rely on Nick Chubb in that running game to carry this offense. But the offensive line is, in shambles. A lot of young guys there, playing some guys in some new positions that actually did play last year. So that got that offensive line struggling. And like I said, freshman quarterback, you said. And I don't necessarily know what the thinking was there. Maybe, did Eason really beat him out, or is it one of those instances where, this is our first year, we got a honeymoon grace period anyway. Do we just throw our true freshman quarterback in there, letting him build on year one, and maybe the veteran guys are a step better, but are they that much better, and how many wins is that really worth? So do you build your future and go ahead and throw Eason in there? So maybe that was a thought process. We'll never know. We're not in the coaches' offices there, so we'll see there. But I really think
I think Georgia's on their way.
Say it again, Joey. I'm sorry.
I said I think Georgia's on their way to a 6-6 season this year. I mean, I really do. I think that Vanderbilt loss kind of sealed their fate with a 500 record. And if Kirby Smart doesn't watch himself, he might not make a bowl game this year. I mean, is he really have a honeymoon period if he doesn't make a bowl game in his first year at the University of Georgia? This isn't South Carolina. This isn't Kentucky. This is one of the top 8 programs in the country, and you don't make a bowl game your first year. So I'm really interested to see, obviously I believe Florida's a much better team than Georgia, and they're going to beat them. But if Georgia obviously can't beat Florida, which I don't expect them to, where do they go from here? You got to win 3 more games to make a bowl. I mean, Georgia still has to play. I don't know if you want to pull it for schedule. They still got to play.
Right here. They're 4-3, so 2 more games.
2 more games.
But Florida, Kentucky, Auburn.
Kentucky's looking better right now.
Kentucky's looking better, and
Auburn. They're not beating Auburn.
Right.
Nope.
Where it stands right now,
not going to happen.
Louisiana, Lafayette.
Nope.
And then Georgia Tech.
That's a win. And Georgia Tech, that's a rivalry game. Georgia Tech's given Georgia in their best years trouble. I mean, when Georgia was a national champion contender, Georgia Tech's given them trouble. So, I mean, I can only really circle one lock win in that schedule after this. I mean, so I'm just saying Georgia might have to steal a game just to make a bowl after this week.
Yeah, we wouldn't say.
I think Kentucky could beat them. Kentucky looks pretty good right now. They look a lot better than they did when Florida played them.
Yeah, we wouldn't have said, 3 weeks ago Kentucky probably had a chance against Georgia, but once you lose and drop a game to Vanderbilt, then anything is up in the air. Going along that. Of course, if I look at it, I pick Georgia right now, but also a lot maybe depending on how they look against Florida. They are coming off that loss against Vanderbilt. So, yeah, I mean, you can't feel super confident and saying, oh, yeah, they're going to beat Kentucky because, I mean, it's a game at Kentucky. It's been set today for a night game, so it'll be a night game at Kentucky, a 7:30 game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you're right. Auburn
and the Kentucky fans are starting to build momentum. They're getting excited because Kentucky's going to make a bowl this year. Kentucky is going to make a bowl game this year. The fans are starting to get excited now. A month ago we were saying how low they were, and now they've rattled off a couple wins. That Mississippi State win is a good win for the program. As bad as Mississippi State is, they were the first an SEC West team this year. Did you know that? That's crazy.
I did.
That is crazy.
I posted on Twitter last week.
Kentucky is the first team.
West was 7 The West was 7-0 going into that game against the East.
Going to that game. Yep.
I think the average score was 38-15 for the West.
And as
versus
of
the
right
East.
now, Auburn is going to beat Georgia.
Yep.
Auburn is a much better team than Georgia right now. Louisiana Lafayette, that's a win. Is it a win, though? What happened? Nicholls State. I mean, is that a win, though? I mean, Georgia's struggled and we could say Georgia struggled in every game this year. They really have.
Well, I saw it today,
you know, and
yeah, I saw it today where people were saying they could easily be what, 5-2, or they could easily be 2-5.
It's true. If I'm a Georgia fan and Georgia loses on Saturday, which they obviously should, I'm nervous to make a bowl game. I really am, because I can only circle one game in November that I'm confident with as a Georgia fan. You know, I can only circle one game in November I'm confident with as a Georgia fan. So, you know, Kirby Smart, like I said, did that automatically put him on the hot seat if he doesn't make a bowl game next year?
I don't think so. Not quite yet. From what I've heard and sources I trust there are probably – they're looking at 10 to 12 players that will leave the program after this year who are not necessarily adjusting to the Kirby mantra, Kirby way of doing things. They're not buying in. So it's – and the reason for that is now, you know, this is kind of coming from a Georgia side, that those guys don't want to work hard. They don't want to be in the new look Georgia Bulldog program, leaving from Mark Richt to Kirby Smart. So it's a new way of going about attacking a game plan and practice and all that. So, you know, you take that for what it's worth. You know, it's from the Georgia side of things.
I believe it. I believe it.
So,
you know, Mark Richt he was a player's coach, ran a country club type atmosphere, you know, at his program, and that was part of his downfall. You know, I think he kind of was too much of a player's coach, kind of like Mac Brown became.
Yep. So there we go. It's Florida. It's Georgia, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Joey, so what's your thoughts on the game and how this game will turn out for the Gators?
You know, obviously I'm picking Florida to win. I mean, Florida's the far better team. They're better on offense, better on defense, special teams better. You know, but who knows? Georgia was the better team 2 years ago, and Will Muschamp's swan song, like you said. So, you know, who knows? But this is a rivalry game. Even in the most lopsided years, it always seems to be some crazy thing that happens, and you know, it ends up, you know, going to a different team. So. You know, so you never know. I'm not going to say with 100% certainty that Florida will win, but I will say with a 90% certainty that I believe Florida wins this game. Florida's 6.5-point favorites right now. The line's trending up. I think it could go as high as 8 by game time on Saturday. A lot of money coming in on Florida this week. So I think Florida wins by a touchdown. I don't know if they cover. I think it's going to be closer than the spread if it goes up to 8. I think Florida wins by a touchdown. I say low scoring game, actually. I say 20-13.
Oh, there you go. That's my exact score as well. So I was going 20-13 as well. I was trying to lean in maybe 27-13, but I just
it could. Who knows?
Yeah,
it could.
But 20-13 be my score.
Throw all the records out the window. So
there you go. Like I said, both teams have bye weeks. You know how that affect the game. And you look at the Florida offense, you know, not consistent. Georgia offense, not consistent. Both teams better on the defensive side of the ball. That does kind of lean toward maybe a low-scoring game there. So it may come down to special teams. Georgia has found their way with a field goal kicker who has now kind of righted the ship a little bit. They started slow, missed some field goals early on in the year. Eddie Pinheiro, I think we've seen might miss one a game or something. Maybe not as consistent as we would like, but much, much, much better, and a far cry from what we saw last year, where he's still a reliable option. So, I think it will come down to a low score, some special teams. Joey and I both pick a score of 20-13, Florida over Georgia. And Joey, my goal is always, always, always Florida-Georgia game. Always, when that other side of the stadium is filled with green seats and not red and black.
Absolutely. That's always, and it's been the last 2 years. That's how it's been. The last two years, it's been such a blowout in the third quarter that that the other side has been empty. So I'm hoping that that Saturday is another showing of that. But with their low score predictions, just our luck, it's probably going to be like a 52-40 game or something crazy like that. So
we'll
but who knows?
We'll take that as long as it's orange and blue on that side.
Absolutely. So, this game always makes me nervous. Like I said, you can throw out the record books, no matter how bad Florida is, no matter how bad Georgia is, this game is a rivalry game. The teams don't like each other. The coaching staff, McElwain worked with Kirby Smart, so they know each other real well. They've seen each other in practice. They've gone against each other in practice. So, it'll be fun to see what McElwain has for Kirby Smart's defensive schemes.
There we go. So both of us pick a score of 20-13, Florida over Georgia. This is Gators Breakdown. You can find me, your host, David Waters, on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Joey, tell them where they can find you, my friend.
Joey_Sports Talk. Twitter, follow me. I'm a pretty decent follow. I like sarcasm, and David and I always go back with each other. We and some laughs and giggles on Twitter. So I take Twitter as serious as a grain of salt. It's just a place to have a good time. So
yeah, we don't get too rowdy, as we'll leave it at this and hit her harder later in the year. But
David and I will be getting crazy on Saturday together at the cocktail party.
We will. We're going to find each other and we will have a pic and we will post it on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll post it on Twitter. Pick of the SEC breakdown, guys. So.
There we go. All right. For Joey, this is David. This has been Gators Breakdown. We'll see you guys later.